Hello, viewers. Welcome to another interesting episode of the Semiconductor Podcast. Today, on this episode, we are thrilled to welcome Srinivasan Venkataramanan, a globally recognized technologist, entrepreneur, and thought leader in the VLSI and the semiconductor ecosystem. Srinivasan is the CEO of AsFigo, a London based company revolutionizing semiconductor design and verification solutions. He also serves as the CEO and co founder of VerifWorks and CTO at the CVC Private Limited, where he deeply involved in building next generation verification technologies and nurturing talent in India. With over 2 decades of his career includes key leadership roles at Synopsys, Intel, Philips or NXP, real chip communications and breaker verification systems, where he worked on some of the most advanced ASIC and SoC verification platforms. A passionate contributor to the global semiconductor community, Srinivasan serves on the technical program committee of DAC, the Design Automation Conference, DVCon US, DVCon India, DVCon China, and is an advisory board member at Blue Horizons. Notably, he played a pivotal role in bringing DVCon to India. He holds master degree from IIT Delhi and widely respected in his work in verification methodologies, technical authorship, and mentoring engineers worldwide. Please join me welcoming Srinivasan Venkataraman to the show. Welcome, sir.
Thank you. You just call me Srini if that is easier for you. Hello
Yeah,
to your audience. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on which time zone you're tuning in from. Glad to have you, Mridul. I think we go a long way back in terms of connecting to each other. I'm glad there is a really dedicated platform to stream semiconductor related podcast content. It's something very unique in the world, I would say. Probably for sure the only one in India, and it serves audience across. And I've been impressed by your shows, your content throughout last about a year or so. I've been tracking. I've been enjoying what you guys do. It's my pleasure, my honor to be with you, brother and team.
so it's our show. The domain is ours, and we will together make it great. So, my first question to you: you have had a remarkable journey from IIT Delhi to your current role as a CEO of AsFigo. Could you walk us through the path and share what keeps you passionate about the VLSI domain? And this will be inspiring for the next generation graduates who will follow you using your path. So this will be an inspiring journey. Please share.
I hope so. Thank you. Thanks for putting in superlative words. I don't know if I deserve all of it, but at the bottom of it, I think the humbleness and the dedication, the hard work, the sincerity, things that are taught typically in a traditional Indian family. I emerged from South India, down as a place called Mailadurai. That's where I come from. I did my schooling there, went over my bachelor's at Madurai. It's called Tyagaraja College of Engineering. It's TCE. Madurai, probably many of you would know, it's one of the biggest cities in Tamil Nadu, second biggest after Chennai. Then I studied at IIT for my master's and VLSI. And back then, when we were supposed to choose, and in fact, I had offers from 4 different IITs, and ISC, I narrowly missed it, unfortunately. But then the IITs, I in fact joined IIT Madras to do my integrated electronics. And then, sorry, I'm taking a step back, right? So from IIT Delhi, but it was important for me to choose the right one. And then I didn't know, because those days, I'm talking about 96, 95 timeframe. If you think about it, VLSI wasn't really a name in India. Very hardly people knew this. And then I turned to my mom and asked her, what should I do? And both my mother and father, they were well educated. They were working in central government, but still we were not in a big city. So they sought help of a gentleman named Ismail Ahmed. And I wanted to mention that gentleman because he's the one who said, look, VLSI, because we had no idea what semiconductors and chips were back in. Imagine the 12th grade student coming from a small town, right? So you wouldn't know, right? You wouldn't know what the chip design can do for you, and that gentleman really guided, saying this is the thing to do. And then I jumped on, a train along with my brother and then my twin brother, and then we both went to IIT Delhi for interviews. And then I cracked it, and then the journey took off from there. I would say, I was fortunate to be associated with Philips Semiconductors. Back in those days, it wasn't called NXP; it was just Philips. And in fact, my first job was at Philips Albuquerque in the US. That's my first time I flew to US and did my master's project along with my colleagues there, along with my professor. And the journey took off from there, thanks to Philips, and they sponsored my master's, and also my first job after my graduation was in Netherlands. I was offered, and Philips, probably again, if you could recall, Netherlands, Eindhoven is their headquarters. That's where they started from, and it's called Natuurkundig Laboratorium in Dutch, and it's called NatLab for the short say. And then that's where I started my career, and that the reason I'm going back to those roots back in 98, 97 time frame is a lot of people in India, especially since you're talking about students, a lot of them try and comply, especially on the social media. What you study in college isn't really something that you use a lot in your career. And I do respect their viewpoints. I think there are a whole lot of them who unfortunately fall in that category. But for those who really want to do technical is a tricky word, but let's say what we call as a core industry. I'm targeting this messaging to your audience. Many of them students joining from India, is a bulk of them, as you said. The so-called core disciplines, the core job versus the typical IT job, right? We all use computers. Right? There's no job today without computers in our domain. However,
Yes.
we are not the traditional IT folks, right? So we are semiconductor design engineers. There could be electronics design engineers. There could be thermal. There could be mechanical. All kinds of things. Now, what for me, it was important for me to choose something that I would love to do. And if I were to go to sleep and then wake up the next day morning, I should be motivated to do what I want to do ahead of the day, just for the work's sake. Not for just making money, or just to drive your car, have your pizzas, whatever you want to eat on that day. It's not just that, but the passion, right? That's something that was important for me. And definitely my father played a lot of role. My father's name is Mr. Venkataramanan, so my second name is my father's first name. So he was the primary reason why I would say I became an engineer. And in fact, I spoke about this with Aldec, if you know Aldec as an EDA company. Back in a few years back, they had a similar podcast in a more textual format in a blog. On an engineer's day, they asked me, why did you become an engineer? Right. So that motivation really, was from my father, who was not an engineer by graduation, but by engineer by hands-on, not even by heart, by hands-on. He would rip apart a motorbike, a brand new television, anything of that sort. He wasn't scared of anything, and that motivated me to become an engineer. And from there, I mean, I can talk more about the Philips work and etc. But fundamentally, what I wanted to communicate to your audience, especially the students, is there are certainly fields that if you choose it wisely, if you like it from the bottom of your heart, I, at least as one example, serve as a one example, who has been doing this for 25 years in the same domain without any letdowns, and I still consider myself an engineer, a core hands-on engineer. You could drive that passion even if you choose to do it even at your college level. What I learned in college, I keep telling this to my professor Balakrishnan sir. I learned something at IIT Delhi. I still use it even today. Okay, good. Go ahead, and we can follow up
Yeah,
with
sure.
some more.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was a great journey. And the students, the new generation, they need inspiring journey to get inspired, not only by the job, but also from a real person. And the person is live right now. And this helps our community to have the future leaders who are today the budding engineers, they will be future leaders. So thank you, Srini, for sharing your journey throughout, and your thought process of as an engineer, because engineering is a kind of mindset that people have, and that not only stays within your job. If you are a engineer by mindset, you will apply different solution at different parts of your life through different kinds of workarounds. So with
Thank
that
you.
note, we will move to the next question, that
Mhm.
tell us more about the AsFigo,
Sure.
what inspired its creation and what drives its open source centered vision. Before
Great.
giving it to you, I'll say one thing. Open source software today, we know in a very limited manner. We have some of the Verilog and spy stuffs people or students they use. They know some of the open source, but at a broader category, when in the using in the industry, they are very little educated. So help them get the vision through your journey in AsFigo.
Thank you. I think that's very well curated, kind of next level of conversation that we can have today. Excellent. So starting off from that Philips days, again, I'll go back to the Philips days and then connect back to Asfigo. Bit of a mixed way, but more in a reverse chronological way. What I do at Asfigo, Asfigo is a startup in UK. We primarily focus on generative AI and machine learning driven chip design and semiconductor, both on the design side and the verification side, and also a lot of collaterals, the libraries that are needed. It's not just, generating a piece of code. It's not, when you say Gen AI, it's not about asking a prompt and say, hey, go and do my chip. It's never going to be that, you say, hey, I need a chip to do my, 5G modem, go and give me a chip. It's not going to happen. Never, right? Now, the point is, it requires series of curated engineering architectural steps to get to what you want to do, right? And people expect, again, to talk to your engineering graduate candidates or even the mid-level career engineers that you said, do not worry about AI taking away your job. That will not happen as long as you're strong, you know what you're doing, right? It is a tool. Just like today we are talking on a StreamYard platform, right? On a platform. And in the past, probably we had to do this on a live TV with a camera recording and all that. It's just a technology, right? Gen AI is similar thing. I'm not downplaying the impact of AI. At the same time, if you're a solid engineer, there's nothing to be scared of. You got to embrace the change. Now, that is what we realized at Asfigo, based on my work all the way from the 96, 97 time frame when I started chip design. And my first job was in Philips, as I mentioned. I was working on a program that was defining what is reuse in chip design in those days. Trust me, in those days, I don't know how many of your audience would correlate it. IP reuse is de facto today. But back in those days, there was no reuse. There's really no standard. There was no RMM. If some of you know what RMM is, it's a key standard that enabled for us to do design, RTL designs to be reused across your chips. And that's the reason today you see your Samsung mobile, every 6 months you get a new mobile phone. That is because of reuse. There is no way on earth you're going to design a chip in 6 months down the line and make it into production. You beat your Samsung, Motorola, whatever you like it, right? So all of them use the ARM core, for example, right? The ARM core is down there with lots of IPs reused over a period of time. And back in those days, sitting in Eindhoven, and I was talking to a company in France, it's called LEDA, LEDA, that got eventually acquired by Synopsys, I think. So the point I'm trying to get to is they started doing some things for us to enforce reusable IP generation or development. And back now, as we go 2023, I look at what should I do. I've done already EdTech venture at CVC. It still continues. There's also a consulting company that runs. Now, what is next? And we saw it coming up. Gen AI was just picking up in our domain. It is even now, it's still picking up, I would say. But back in those days, it was very early on. And what I realized quickly was the prompting was still evolving, the LLMs were getting trained and etc. But it wasn't at a stage that you could go and say, hey, generate this assertion for me. I have my, let's say my arbiter or my FIFO or, my, fancy memory controller, go and describe it in a few words and say, generate an assertion for me. It wouldn't do it back in those days. Even today, it does something. It spits out, I would say, text, not even a code. What's the difference? The code is something that is supposed to do what you want it to do, right? Whereas the text is a bunch of lines that attempt to do that, right? I always say that do not become a typist, because at the end of the day, we type code. But you got to design that in your mind and then put it back in the Vim or VS Code, whatever you code it. And this is something as a trait I learned from one of my professors, Dr. C.P. Ravikumar. I want to mention him. He's a popular person in LinkedIn and Facebook, if some of you want to look up. He was my hostel warden as well. So there are more connect points for us. But then I keep meeting him in Bangalore. He's now, I think, retired, but he's quite active. He drives the VDAT in India, VLSI Design and Test Symposiums and etc. And the reason I'm mentioning him was I remember he's a short man. He's sitting next to me in the computer lab at Phillips lab in IIT Delhi. And then he starts typing code. When he said typing, he actually thinks. He is a running C compiler. That's how I used to call it. He will not make a compiler mistake, typos. He wouldn't let the parser come and find the faults for you. He would know what he's talking about. He's typing. When he's typing, he's coding. Most of us, unfortunately, at least at the student level, when we code, we know there will be errors. But his code, I've never seen any compilers, right? So that is the motivation I had. Again, fast forward to 2023. When you look at SVA today, I don't want people to type it. I want them to code it. What does it mean? You got to run the compiler back of your mind. When you type something, you know, okay, you mean this. You have to have the design in mind and then put it in the code. And that is kind of what we wanted to drive with Gen AI today, because generative AI is, make no mistake, it's going to come. It is there, right? In 2023, we were saying it is coming. Now it's already there in 2025. So we said, we require something fundamentally different than simple code generators, your Python scripts, your Perl scripts, and etc. So back in those days, the open source ecosystem, since you asked about it, the open source ecosystem is still evolving. But in those days, there are two primary parsers. One is from Google. Again, many of you probably do not realize Google is investing a lot in chip design and semiconductors, especially on the tooling side. It's called Variable. And then there are other companies that is what we call just like a C-lang, there is an S-lang for SystemVerilog, and then there's a PySlang, and then there's PySlint that we built on top of all this. The reason to build all that was when you give a prompt, the text that comes out has to become a code. So we started early on in setting up this, what is called a multi-agentic AI, which would basically mean do not rely on a single agent to do your job. Generate something, run it through a parser, then once you have it, run it through a linter, make sure it is complete so that the end product is good. And to do all this, you can imagine that the generative AI, there are two major concerns that we have today. One is the cost, the other is the confidentiality part, right? So the confidentiality meaning for students, probably it's not such a big deal because, it's okay. Their ideas can come out. But for main companies, it is an in-house Llama instances that you can have today. People are solving that. Companies like Sambanova, if you know, they are building LLMs on-prem, right? There are companies who can do LLMs on-prem today, right? So Sambanova is a great example of that, right? So similarly, what we see is once you start doing this, you need tools to validate the text that is generated. And that is when open source kicked in, because the moment you start using commercial parsers, companies like, and it's dominated by three, you would know, Synopsys, Cadence, and Siemens CDA, and Aldec to a large extent. And some of them have been my partners, my employers, and etc. So I don't have nothing against them. But just that for the LLM, imagine that you got to run that code 10 times through the same parser. You're going to pay for 10 times license keys. That just doesn't scale up. The 10 would quickly jump onto millions if you can scale it up, right? N number of users, N number of iterations, just no way you're going to pay for that much money to an EDA company. That's where the open source comes in. Open source today is no longer your small code writing tools, right? It's really the central piece of all the generative AI today. The tools can actually mature over a period of time. You mentioned Spice, you mentioned Verilog. There is something called a Verilator, Icarus Verilog. The two good tools today on the open source Verilog side of it. And then there is something called Open Road. If some of you are not, your audience are not familiar with, I'm sure you are familiar. But you could take a
Yes.
RTL code all the way to a GDS, and there is something called a tiny tape out. If you are, again, it's an invitation to most of your audience. If they want to see a manufactured chip of their design, today they can do it completely in open source. We have evolved to that stage today. So welcome to the brave new world, wherein you could tape out your chip sitting in, let's say, Bangalore or Kolkata or anywhere else, Jamshedpur, if you pick a city, if you will, or Madurai and Mailadurai, wherever you want to do, or Mysore, you could actually design a chip, public domain. You can use completely open source tooling and tape it out and get the chip back for very minimal cost. So that's kind of what motivated us to drive deeper into the open source ecosystem. And AsFigo has been doing this since 2023, as I mentioned. We built a series of technologies. It's called linters. And as I mentioned, the linter, the first one that I worked at Philips Semiconductors at Eindhoven was a lint tool called LEDA. That was for RTL. And since then, it's been my dream to establish something in verification for the same thing. My second job was in Real Chip Communications in Chennai. It's a startup. It was a startup that did very well. And back in those days, I jumped into verification and never looked back. Since 2000, I've been in verification domain for about 25 years. I never regret even a single day of what I do. And I look back and then say, look, okay, I've done something in my life. And I put all that into AsFigo to say that when you say LLM is nothing but, in our traditional Indian way of thinking, it's like your gross to monum vyakyanam, if you know some of these Dakshinamurti shlokas and etc. So essentially, it kind of assimilates thoughts and knowledge over a period of time and then gives it to you as and when you ask. I don't know if you connect to it, but some of your audience can easily connect,
Yes.
saying, if I ask my guru the right question, I'll get the wisdom. So
Yes.
similar things will happen in the generative AI today, if you can correlate it. I don't want to be too religious of the whole thing, but at the same time, the concept
Yes.
is very interesting, right?
Yes,
That's
I
what.
would like to rectify the word religious into the philosophical, because mostly things are in the philosophical domain.
Fair,
Uh,
fair.
when we learn something from gurus, and gurus is the knowledge bank of uh, our periphery, whatever periphery we have. So in that way, it's a philosophy. I will not
Yeah,
use
very
the
fair.
word
I stand
religion. It's
corrected.
a, yeah,
Yeah, I stand corrected. Thank you.
yeah.
Yeah, the philosophy and the technology can wed together and can marry together, and that is what I see today, and that is what AsFigo is building. Yeah. And let's have it as a more, because one thing that you might have noticed by now is I talk little longer. If you want to break it into multiple pieces, feel free to do so. I think that will be
Yes,
more
sure,
interesting.
sure. This is our show, and we talk here in a very very relaxed way. We don't have time boundness. We can be as there, and the beauty of this podcast is that we stream it live. Later on, people who are not available at this time, they can watch it recorded. So both audience are here. So it's our show. We'll talk like that. The fashion we want right now, the
So,
energy that is getting exchanged between you and me. So in that way. And one thing I'd like to add to your open source, you have said about the open road. Before the open road, the Linux community struggled with Fedora Electronics Lab. So there was it was in the, I think, Fedora distribution. So there were small nitty gritties was there. They used to do the same thing open road was doing, but open road now is portable to any of the Linux systems,
that's right.
not only to Fedora or CentOS. So which was the Red Hat only thing. So
Yes.
I'm talking about 2010 timeline. So that time I tried hard to port it into the Ubuntu system, and I failed, and there was things. But now the things are more portable. One, it is developed at some point, and it is easily portable to any of the Linux distribution. Anyone using Mint, anyone using Red Hat, or any of the SUSE or something, they can
Ubuntu.
use the open road. Yeah. So that thing has evolved, and that is making us breathable. At least we can have the OS of our choice and the software chain of our choice. So that thing, I think, open source has given us relaxation over the years. Since
Yeah.
you are witnessing this at your end from long, you would be able to resonate what with my words and thoughts.
So, in fact, since you mentioned that, I think we're going to do step into the next level of productivity, wherein, especially for students, even if you do not own a computer, you could do it on the fly. I mean, people talk generally about the playgrounds that are available on the EDA world, but they are all commercial tools. Be careful on your. I mean, especially sitting in the Europe and UK side of it, the privacy is a big concern. You do not want to
Yes.
give in everything, but there are
Yes.
tools that can run on public domain servers for free using open source today. There is something called EBMC. I don't know if you know. There's a bounded model checker for formal verification live. You can do it on the fly on the web. You do not even need. Of course, it runs on a Linux OS, but you don't even have to own a computer for it. I mean, meaning a
Yeah.
Linux box for it. You could do that.
Yeah.
We are very soon. In fact, I have a student intern working from the US. His name is Himang. Probably he deserves a mention here. Himang Gangwal, and he works on. He's kind of putting. He's almost ready. I have to verify his prototype, but he's putting some of this lint on. It's an open source thing, but he's putting it on a server with an AWS background behind the scene and etc. It's something that you can log into a website and just run your code. We are at that level of
Yes.
next
Yes. Yes.
generation
Yes.
enablement has to come from there, and open source is the way to do it, because of course EDA vendors are there to make money. Everybody has to make money. I mean, we are in a commercial world. Let's make money. We should make more.
Yes.
I
Yes.
wish
Yes.
Tech Simplified becomes so popular that there are ads flowing in and you're unable to count your dollars or
Yeah.
rupees.
So yeah. So another thing is that previously, if someone is web hosting at some interface like HostGator, like the Big Rock, all these big names. So their backend is based on Linux. Their cPanel is based on Linux. The thing that you are saying that was available there, the shell there, you can install it there, something if you want, if you are a web hosting or a webmaster. So, but that was not available to the general public. So, in contrast, nowadays, what you have said about the AWS and all those things, now that backend thing has come to front and it is on the cloud. So when anyone can access it from anywhere, and then don't have to do the headache of installing Linux, maintain it, update it,
Yeah.
and they can just try it out. However, I'll also add that Linux installation and maintenance now also is at very ease. Long back, if I go back in 2002 2003, that time there was a magazine called PC Quest. They used to
Yeah.
release CDs
Yeah.
of Linux distributions with
Yeah.
their publications, and without those CDs we cannot install the Linux.
Yeah, I
So
have some of those, and I remember because back in those days the internet speeds were not so high enough for us to download an Ubuntu binary or image at your will. The CDs were our saviors. I remember that. Yes,
yes, and I still have some of those CDs, the
yes,
PC Quest CDs, and they are, I think, has now moved to the Hall of Fame, because that time every magazine like PC Quest, the Digit, and there was a magazine called gaming magazine called Score. They used to distribute CDs, and in there both the Linux, the Mac, and as well as the Windows applications were stuffed into the CDs. Then came the DVDs. They were stuffed, and people can use it. Now at the broadband age, no one thinks of those things. Those are gone into the Hall of Fame. But
you
that
miss
time,
EFI. You miss EFI, electronics for you. That was another big
electronics for
one.
you, yes, they used
That's
to
another
release
one.
even,
Big one.
yeah, yes, they used to release CDs, and they had some projects from, they had some stores from there. You can buy the components and you can
Right.
assemble and use them.
Yes, I did that back in Madurai. I remember we walk around the
Yes, even
streets.
I did too.
Yeah, I mean, there's
I
a
did.
code that you give, and then they give you the 555 timer, the resistor, the capacitor for it, and then you go back and solder it, and then make it work, and it's like
Yes,
excitement. And
yes.
that
So
excitement is what.
that was the thrill that time,
Yes,
because internet was not there, only book, and then we realized something on hand was very exciting. Now at the age of internet, everything is accessible, everything is available. So
true.
at this age now, that what you have said, the cloud computing, using that, the open source is coming to the usage, even from someone's mobile or tablet they
Yeah,
can access and run. So I think the technology is the only thing that is changing, and in this technology world, the change is the only constant.
that's
So
right. That's right.
if you like, if you don't like, it is going to change.
Like it or not. Yeah, embrace it,
Yeah,
you live.
yeah,
That's
and
what we
only
have done at AsFigo. We realized it is no longer just you can say, okay, I offer an additional tooling to you or additional service to you, which is needed. Service, no mind. I mean, definitely in India context, especially, service is the big chunk of the whole thing. But I think we are all seeing this. We got to rise up to the challenge and raise our value proposition to our customers, both inside the
yes,
country and as well as outside. And it's important to do what you're doing. Yeah.
yes, yes, yes. And with that note, I'll move on to the next question, and
Yes.
uh, it is a broader version of the open source. I'll like to know that, in your view, how open source can play a role in fostering the global collaboration between the academia and the industry in the VLSI or electronics ecosystem.
Excellent. Great question, because this is again something you alluded to some of them in the you mentioned the Fedora or the Linux thing that you talked about. I remember sitting at IIT and then using Magic. I don't know if you have used those Magic tools, layout tools, right? That was an open source tool from UCB and stuff, and we also used tools from Stanford, and the University of California, Illinois, Irvine. Sorry, I think those all tools that we've used from those days. What I'm trying to say is the open source is not really new. It's been there, especially in the academia side, for a long, long time, right? The B, some of you would recall the Spice simulator is from Berkeley, right? The Berkeley Spice was very, very popular. Even today, probably popular, right? So there's been open source in chip design for, especially in the academia side, for a long time. But what has transformed today, and think what we see more and more is even remote universities, remote institutions sitting in, even in a, thanks to all this internet revolution, etc., they can start contributing. And I have people from Kanchipuram. There's a gentleman named Hariharan who lives in Chennai. He is an ex-Qualcomm person. He teaches at IIIT Kanchipuram, and then we have many people like that. And there is a person in IIT Palakkad, for example. So there are several people who are sitting in not your fancy Chennai's, Delhi's, Mumbai and Kolkata's alone, Bangalore alone, but in other places who can start working with global audience. As well as I mentioned, I have a student sitting in Fremont in the US contributing back to the open source. And we have a similar thing happening in, I think, Spain, or somebody who contributed recently to an SDF annotation into Icarus Verilog. And it happens all across, and more so in Europe. I see that. But talking about the open source collaboration between academia and industry, I think that is definitely on the rise. In the past, it wasn't, because yes, these two are two different communities. You did Magic, nobody cared in the industry. You walk into Philips, who uses Magic, right? So unfortunately, in those days. But fast forward today, what we see is the other way, especially for this niche technology that we are building, UBM lint, SVA lint, and things. What we built, what Himank is building, is way ahead of what probably some of these companies doing chip design in Outer Ring Road in Bangalore do not even have today. Because one is the cost part of it, the other is awareness. And that is where this kind of podcast, I'm hoping, will help people to realize open source has leapfrogged miles ahead today. So you can build a linter sitting at your home, and then that can be used in your Outer Ring Road, which in the past you had to go to your EDA vendor, name it whatever A, B, C, and then you got to ask for it and then pay them $1 million and wait for 6 months to get that code. Today, you can have a 10th grader, 11th grader, 12th grader sitting in Fremont, develop that code, and you can use it in Bangalore or Kanchipuram. That's what is happening today as a production, as a really a production flow. Because the beauty of open source is it is vetted by multiple people, and you do not, if you do not like the implementation, you are free to fork it and then do your own implementation. That's something wonderful with open source. People are doing that today as we speak. I know Hariharan, for example, is leading some teams, some students developing assertion IPs with some guidance from us. He wants to use SVA lint with them. Very later is supporting UVM today for those, again, for fast forward to verification, what I do for bread and butter. So if you think about it, UVM, SVA today can be run on open source tools for free, right? Now, that is a big leap we have made, and that is something easily transferable to a job at Intel, AMD, Apple, Qualcomm, because they all use the same UVM, same SVAs, right? AMS is another big thing. We'll talk about AMS sometime in an opportunity time. But you see that
Yes.
the skills that you can do in academia today can be easily ported to an industry. Unlike back in my days, 97, I was doing magic and nobody cared about it at Philips because Philips
True.
doesn't use magic. Today, UVM Lint is something that we develop at a student level. Some students can develop it, but it is more and more used in many, many companies as their own gatekeepers. Today, the code cannot be checked into a cloud, your GITs, the SVNs, without having a UVM Lint signing it off. And it's all happening in open source for free. And this is an invitation for your students to join your community, to join and start contributing. And there are beautiful conferences across the globe. There is something called ORConf, this is happening this time in Spain. Last time it was in Gothenburg. The prior to that, it was probably Munich. We have been part of that, and there's also equivalent in the US. It's called NACHEP. It happened at MIT. It happened in UC Center, blah, blah. So we have been there. We go and show what we can do with students, and hopefully we'll have some this time too. So we go and show, and this is again the reason I'm bringing this to your students is if they aspire for an international publication in live. I'm talking about live. It is not a you know what I'm saying. It's not a shady
Yeah.
thing,
Mm.
but it's vetted by industry professionals. That is something today that collaboration of open source between academia and industry is happening more and more today. Thanks to open source.
Great. Please do share whenever you have this handle. So I'll reshare so that people who are following us on LinkedIn or in our channel, they can get to know. Because one thing I have realized that today the conferences and all, they are happening on their own, and students from a remote village, they don't have an idea about what is happening. As you have shared live with our audience, many of the students are watching. Questions already has started to come in, although we will answer in the last 10 minutes. So I'll ask people to stay up to the last. So the fact is that many people do not know that there is a conference, as you have said about the ORConf. Okay, so many people do not know about that and what is all about, and so they make a distance from that.
Hmm.
Now, as you have said, and you have encouraged the young generation, they will be very much inspired to look into it.
Yeah, I'm hoping so. And
So
also, since you mentioned about a conference back home in Bangalore, there is DVCon coming up in September. And for
yes,
students, there is an invitation to even we will pay all your costs. Since you mentioned DVCon India, I brought to India long back 2015, I
yes,
think. Me
yes,
and Ajita, we worked with Dennis Brophy's, the Accelera team to bring that to India. We played our bit. I'm not saying I'm the only one, but Umesh
yeah,
Sishodia,
sure, sure,
Satyajit
sure.
Sutra, he had a system C thing, and then we had a system Verilog, and we married these two. We had something called a DV talk going on. But anyway, fast forward, DVCon India happening in September is giving you all expenses paid trip to Bangalore with your designs, being demoed, etc. I don't remember exactly the timelines, but that's something that's we invite students to submit their proposals, designs and proposals on the dvcon.org website. If you go to dvcon-india.org, you should be able to see it. And do not pay too much money because you can get a sponsorship. And many of the companies also provide you scholarships to attend these DVCons. I know a lot of students from VIT Vellore join there. PES in Bangalore, they come in. But I wish more and more remote, college students come and take part of it. Yeah,
Yes,
that's happen
and
more.
one other purpose of starting this podcast is nowadays in Indian subcontinent, everyone has at least 2 GB internet per day. Now, internet has good and bad side, so it is up to the student to use it for good, and that's why you are podcasting, that it spreads among the students and they come to know about the resources are available to them. They can jump into the resources and they can avail them. So this is another purpose, because YouTube is a platform that is easily scalable, so it can spread. If it is spreading right, if the student has interest, they have come to our channel, or some way or other listening from a friend, so they will come to know. And they don't have to be in a very sophisticated webinar, in a
Yeah,
very sophisticated way. So it's easily accessible. The gift of the internet should be used for the benefit of the mankind. So the students, they are the future, so they must get the information way hand. And that's why I think we have thought of the YouTube platform, because it is much more widespread than if we compare any other the social media. Because the Google is the first one in the search engine, and the second is the YouTube. So anyone has a smartphone, he or she will have the YouTube app in that. So
So I was
instead
talking
of watching,
on that note, Brazil, if you don't mind me
yeah,
interrupting.
yeah, yeah,
So
sure, sure,
I was talking to a podcaster in the UK, in London, a few weeks back, and
yeah, yeah, yeah,
yeah, I don't want to bring up a competition per se, but
sure,
he's
sure,
also trying to do something. And we were chatting generally, and I was throwing this idea that the next generation, because I talk to my son often to get advice.
yeah,
All right.
hmm,
So they are more and more also into the reels. So I would request you guys spend some time, look at, I know reels are a different, I'm not a reels guy, the Instagram reels
yeah,
thing, but I believe there's something that we need to spice up the whole conversation. So if you, I don't know if it's easy for you, but Tech Simplified could take the lead, and he kind of dismissed the idea. Well, that's okay. I mean, some people you could dismiss too. I don't know if it's a good idea, but
yeah. It
nevertheless, think of
all
different
ideas
ways
are welcome.
proliferate these. I think that's important. Like a YouTube Shorts, you could make a reel or few reels and then pass it along, have the conversation, have the fun going. Once you start the students, there is no stopping them. Once you put them into
Yes,
this track, there's nothing stopping them. Yeah.
yeah, it's a great suggestion. So we note the suggestion, and we will make it happen. So
Yeah.
don't worry, because internet is flowing everywhere. And
Yeah.
I was about to say about the reels. So again, the reel is now overwhelming. So instead of having the bad side of the internet, you get the good side of the internet.
Exactly.
So
Let's do what we
yeah,
can
yeah,
and
yeah,
then leave it to the student, leave it to the consumers to pick what they want. Right? We offer the content. Let them pick what they want. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Excellent.
So definitely. And with that note, we'll move to the next question. That having worked extensively with System Verilog, UVM, OVM, PSL, and formal methods, which verification methodology has the most significant impact, and why? This is a student perspective question, because when the students look at the digital, right, the digital verification, digital design, so when they look at, so what should be their vision towards learning them and getting attracted to them? So it's for students. So over
Right.
to you.
Thanks. Thank you. I think you mentioned a lot of those names that are been in the industry, and it's been stepping stones for us to get to where we are today. And if you had asked me this question 5 years back, I would have said UVM. Period. Right? There's nothing else you need to do. Just learn UVM. You're done. Right? Or maybe UVM plus SVA for the formal side. But given that we are talking in 2025 and your audience is going to watch it in the next upcoming months and quarters, and hopefully they will come out in 2026 and start working on it, make no mistake, mark my word, UVM is not going to get you the job. Right? I'm sorry. UVM is become a so-called necessary but not sufficient. Right? So it's a definitely needed thing, but that's not sufficient enough. So you got to embrace the generative AI that's coming up, very big, right? I'm not asking you to pay money to open AIs or any of them. There are open source llamas and the cloud A's and etc. And those, again, don't worry about training the models, but see what you can do with them. Right, that's important as a skill. But in terms of going back to, since your part of your question was what is most impactful in the industry, even today, if you go back to Harry Foster's, the Wilson research and all that standard surveys that you get, UVM is the most used verification methodology ever in our chip design industry. So there's no going back on it. UVM is definitely needed, and it is there to stay. But it's got to a different shape now. It's called mixed signal. So for those who are analog and mixed signal designs, you need UVM MS. UVM MS is popular these days. It's coming up as a gift standard. So UVM is something you got to learn. And then in terms of PSL and SPA, I mean, I wish to see more PSL, but fact as the matter is, again, we led the content, and because we wrote, me, Ajita, Ben Cohen, and a few others got together to write books on it. I think I probably will talk a little deeper, but conceptually, we wrote a first book on PSL. So I have nothing against PSL, but the fact is, more and more customers are using SVA. So if you're a student who want to learn like the jargon that you mentioned, VMM, OVM, UVM, I would say UVM. PSL, SPA, pick SPA. If you ever have to do PSL, I'm sure you can do it because you're all smart engineers. Once you learn one, you can do the other. Especially coming from India, you can talk Hindi, you can talk Bengali, you can talk Tamil, you can talk English. It's no big deal for us. The idea is important. The design is in your mind. You put it on different languages. So do not try and learn 10 different languages on the computer side. Learn one or two that most impactful and then most widely used in the industry. But if you want to be really employable, because that's probably one of the reasons why engineers look at these things, especially because a lot of engineers in India want immediately a job, not just for research. Bulk of them, right? And I don't blame them. I mean, right? So it's a right thing to do because we all are still upcoming in terms of, let's say, the let's say the economic side of it, right? I know it's a very, very well developed country, but at the same time, a lot of engineers want to make money, which is nothing wrong. And if you want to be completely employable, make no mistake, you will need code that is lint friendly. It no longer can you write a UVM code. Can you write a UVM code that is really quality as demanded by the industry, right? For example, I will go deeper because UVM, I had to get into deeper. But if you do not use the factory object correctly, you're not writing UVM, you're typing. Remember the typing versus coding? When you type, you got to code it. So you got to code it means you got to have a linter along with it, along with your generative AI, because it's no longer that, oh, can you write this AMBA model in UVM? Actually, today, trust me, if you haven't tried it, please go to VS Code or OpenAI and say, hey, generate an APB driver for me in UVM. Guaranteed you're going to get it, right? You're going to get a 200 lines of code from,
Yes.
or I must say, from an OpenAI / Cloud A model today. So it's no longer the differentiator for you as a student. You want to take it to the next level. You want to make sure it is lint compatible, SVA, lint, and UVM lint. Also, something that you can use generative AI to generate that code and figure out what you can learn from it. Do not stay back and say, no, I will not. Don't be a perfectionist saying, I will never use generative AI. I will type all the code myself. It's a waste of your time, right? Especially for your students. Embrace the change. Come up to technology, come up to speed, learn generative AI, learn UVM. Make no mistake, UVM is extremely important. You got to understand the bells and whistles, the bolts and nuts. However, do not stop at the bolt and nut. You got to make a bike.
Yes, and the most serious part of this IC design is that once the IC is fabricated, you cannot change it. It's not a software release that you can go up for a patch.
Yeah.
And it's not that we are going to have a release candidate of the IC. So that is the thing, because that is the I think the toughness as well as the seriousness from the student's perspective, that they need to learn the philosophy of the language. That's why I framed this question, that they need to learn the philosophy. And as you have said, the philosophy stays in the mind and it come out as a coding,
Yes.
not as typing.
That's right.
So
you mentioned that
yes.
a couple of more examples. Your chips could be going into the satellite. It may be in the sky, right? Tare Zameen par types, right? You're talking about things that are going to be up in the satellite. There's no way you're going to go there and change it and come back and fix it.
Yes.
Other thing is your bikes and the autonomous systems, right? You're talking about Teslas and stuff. And we are all the guys who are enabling Teslas to do these designs, right? Now, you make a mistake, it can be a life and death question, right? It's not just entertainment. Do not think automotive electronics is all about entertainment. It is about the ADAS. It's about your sensing. It's about your, you know what I'm saying? Real-time decisions that you make. And that can be life and death question. So there is no room for error in our domain in IC design. You got to get it right. Yeah.
Yes. So again, I would like to boost your words through my words, that the philosophy has to be there in the mind. Otherwise, the problem will be you are depending solely on a generative AI, and the AI gives you a code. You don't know where the code will take. And you are actually blindfolded work. It's a blindfolded work. You are working a blindfolded thing. So you have to validate whatever, even you use a generative AI, you have to validate what it has given, and you have to benchmark it so that it is up to the mark for the industrial application. So that is the main thing. So you cannot just
multi-agentic setup that I was talking about. Do not just generate a text from generative AI and then say I'm done with the coding. Make sure it is set in a multi-agentic setup with a parser. Again, understand the technology. This is important. What is a parser? Unfortunately, many of the hardware designer engineers will come and say, I don't know what a parser is. No longer, right? You got to get to that level. So you got to integrate you don't have to write a parser. You can use the open source ones, variables and stuff, but you got to understand what is needed, integrate them into a multi-agentic setup, add something like SVLint or UVM make sure your code does what you wanted to do, as you said. Yep.
So basically, when people learn C code at the, I think the first code in their colleges, now I think it has ported to schools because things go ripple down
Yep.
as the technology moves. So that time when I learned the C, there was two things I have learned. That one is the syntax and that's the semantics. So
Uh-huh.
going deep into the philosophy of the programming. So all those things, even for the hardware languages, people have to uh, assimilate inside. That is the main thing. Even the generative AI is there. You don't think that your job is done, and many people are thinking that jobs will be not there. No, jobs will be there, and they will be more crucial and more responsible because you have to validate something. You
Yep.
cannot pack it blindly. You cannot, if you are a chef of a hotel, you cannot just if your AI is cooking food, you cannot blindly pack it and give it to your customer.
Yep.
You don't know what you are delivering.
It may
So
be too sweety or too salty or too spicy.
you don't know what is going, or it's absolutely garbage.
And you
So
cannot blame it on hallucination because customers are going to
yes,
hold you responsible, right? Yeah.
yeah. One day you might get appreciation, and next day you can get rotten tomatoes.
Yeah.
So uh, mm, that is why I'm asking the question, because students have their eyes are getting opened. So it's not there, they know everything, they have a lot of thing, they lot of jargons, they in smartphone there are a lot of apps, but their philosophical journey is, their eye opening is going on. That's why in this podcast we ask the experts to give them the right directions, so that they are not lost. So they are not lost among the technology jungle. So today technology is a jungle, we have
Yep.
many
Yep.
things.
Yep. True.
So with that note, I'll move over to the next question. What trends you are observing in the adoption of formal and assertion based verification, and how this is evolving?
Excellent question. I think that's the most prudent question from an industry perspective, because the more and more you see the chips becoming complex, as well as the time to market is less, your competition would churn out the Christmas faster than you, then you lose. Again, I worked at startups, right? So it could be, it's not a life and death thing, but it's a matter of existence. If you do not get it on time, you're done. And students are getting, let's say, job at startups, they look for these specific skills. I think formal verification is certainly becoming the central piece. Almost every company, every team wants to use formal. And the good thing about formal is also now, especially again, I'll talk about the generative AI later, but the formal itself has evolved from just being only for a PhD level expertise to anybody and everybody. It is called the democratization of formal verification. That has now happened through something called a series of apps. There are formal verification apps for connectivity, UNRs, your CSR verification, safety verification, etc., etc. There's a bunch of targeted applications in which formal can do very well with very minimal user expertise. Again, you got to understand it and mature to what is called a FPV, formal property verification or model checking. And that again, I was telling you about the EBMC. It's from one of the universities in New York or somewhere in the US. And that is an open source tool today for you to learn formal verification without paying any money, right? You can do that. There's also YOSIS. Some of you engineers would know that there is, it's from Austria. It's a happy European company. That is another tool available for academia to read and learn more about formal verification. Please don't get left behind. Learn formal verification right from the beginning. Make sure your assertions are formal friendly. So again, we have something called a FE lint. If you go to github.com, again, I think that's something that we should encourage more and more of your users. They should publish their work on GitHub. GitHub is the new CV, as they say, right? It's no longer your PDF or a Word doc that you make. What you code in GitHub over a period of time and commit to the repos, that has a lot more visibility. And if you go to github.com/asfigo, you'll find SVCK, which is your system verilog checker or linter. You have FE lint for formal verification, SVA lint, Most of it is open source. You can develop it, you can download it, use it, enhance it, and commit back. That's important because that is when you say that, okay, I'm a user, I have ran this on this particular repo, and this is what I found. Contribute that, because that is how you show that to the world you have arrived, your students, right?
Thank you for the guidance. And about the GitHub, it was not there way back in 2000, I think 5 or 6 that time. So people used to search in Google, they get lost, and then they again use Google advanced search option, and they used to find something somewhere in some university website subdomain.
Yeah.
Something is there, so that was very difficult way
Yes.
back in that time, 2005, 7, that time frame I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Nowadays GitHub helps a student to get familiar on the things that he or she wants to know. At least have a glance, every GitHub page has a readme file, go through it.
Yes. Yeah.
So there is a technological gift in
True.
terms of a common repository. It's very, very good.
Yeah.
I
ITIL,
appreciated it.
Relator, all of them are on GitHub. You don't have to do
Yes.
anything. You got to download it on your Linux box, build it. And there's a lot of fun in building these complex. If you have done it, the Bazel, the C++, you don't have to code all of it. The beauty is you start learning engineering by doing it, right? It's a
Yes,
beautiful
yes,
ecosystem we
yes,
are into.
yes, yes. So with that note, I'll move on to the next question. You have co-authored several books in this field. What motivated you to write them, and how can students, educators, and university effectively leverage these resources to prepare for their career in digital verification?
Excellent, and it's a little longer story than what you would expect, but I'll try and keep. We are into 56 minutes already. I'll try and keep it as crisp as possible. But this journey starts back in 97, 98 time frame again. 98, I must say. I was using VHDL. Some of your audience probably know there is another language called VHDL along with SystemVerilog and Verilog. When I started my first job, I was doing VHDL, and there's a gentleman named Ben Cohen. He's 80 plus by now, but he's very active. If you Google him, you'll find it. Or if you go to systemverilog.us, you'll find him. He has been my mentor since 98. There used to be this online technical forums called Comp Lang VHDL. And that is when I met this gentleman on the web, and he was sitting in somewhere in Las Vegas near in the US, and I was sitting in Eindhoven. And when I needed help, I wasn't shy. I was going, and yeah, sometimes you got to make yourself a fool in a public domain to learn something, right? And that's something I want to encourage your students as well. Do not shy away. There is nothing called a bad question or a wrong question. Go and of course, do your groundwork. Do not ask, hey, how do I do an arbiter? Do your groundwork. But then if you get stuck, go on, do your groundwork and then publish what you have and then ask for feedback. And that's how I started. And Ben Cohen, we have been in touch. He has been helping me. He's a much, much elder person to me, but he has been helping me very candidly on VHDL related questions. Because back in those days, he had in fact, his company is called VHDL Cohen, right? So Cohen Publishing. So anyway, so fast forward in sometime in 2000, something around that time, my wife Ajita started picking up a lot of it in formal verification. It used to be in proprietary languages. But then Ben again came in and wrote a book on PSL. It's called Property Specification Language. When he did that, I was very interested. I bought the book in India, I was working at Intel. I took a day off, read the book, entire binge read, if you will. People call it binge watch these days, but I did a binge read of the book in one day. And then I made several notes, and Ajita alluded to all of them saying, yes, because she's a formal verification expert, and she thinks more and more concurrently than I do. I mean, we are all programmed to think sequentially, a lot of us. But then there are some gifted people in the world who can think concurrently. And when she did that, and then we collated all this, and by the way, Jita is my wife. So we put that back to Ben saying candidly, hey, with respect, here is a feedback. And then outcomes, initially you think, especially coming from a conservative family in India, you may say, hey, how can you even talk about it to a senior? But since I grew up as my first job in Netherlands, you're allowed, you're in fact encouraged to question the status quo, right? So I went and sent it to him. I took the brave step. I sent him a PDF saying, here are my comments. And then after a few days, we were wondering what will happen. It may get ignored, it may get spam filtered, whatever. Then out comes and says, I love all your ideas. Can we co-author? I said, man, what the heck? I mean, I was just for about 10 years experience, and he's what, 25 years veteran or 30 years. And then he says, can we improve this book and become a co-author? I said, wonderful, why not, right? And that's how it started. Started writing books. Then we never looked back. We wrote about 5 books together on various assertion topics, and VMM, we have published books. We have co-published tutorials at DVCon US. And the latest book that he wrote is on generative AI, and he doesn't sit idle. He's a retired man, but he doesn't do it for money. It's $25 book. I encourage most of you to go and buy. And it's a PDF that you can buy on the web. Again, I don't get any money for it, just on the full disclosure. It's not about the money part, but it's never been about the money. Whenever you are into writing, it is not about the money. It's about the pleasure of writing, right? You kind of write and disseminate the knowledge. And we have published books in India. There's a UVM book for free available on the web, which we wrote. The first UVM book in free. It's called Go to UVM, Just Do It. So none of you have to pay any money to learn UVM is my my mindset, right? You can use open source tools, you can use open source books to learn about it. But of course, if you want to use generative AI with assertions, Ben Cohen's book is there. So we wrote books along with several of these authors, and we published it. I also had the opportunity to work with industry veterans such as Brian Bailey. If some of you know, I think he writes for Semi Engineering today. So I have contributed to a book from him. It's on topic of functional verification. It was collated by IEC, International Engineering Consortium. So things like that we have been doing for long because we love what we do. We want to disseminate. We want to help students to learn it. And since you brought up the book, even though we are all talking about books, PDFs, people say, "Can you send me the PDF?" I said, "No, I wouldn't send the PDF because it's a copyright. So you please buy it." And there is no replacement for a hard copy book. Trust me, when you are on a metro, you are on a train, you are on a bus, reading on a book than on a screen, it's a different paradigm. If some of your students do not do that,
yeah.
Yeah.
Because paper books are more comfort to the eyes, because most of the engineers, they spend long hours in front of the screens, either their PC screens or laptop, or maybe it may be a some iPad or maybe your phone. So a lot of screen lights are entering into your eyes and it is reaching to your brain. So the paper book, it's much more relaxing when you read it.
It's a lot
Much
of
more
fun, and
relaxing today.
it's an easy Sunday afternoon read. There's a nice
Yes,
statement there. Yeah, and on a Sunday
yes, yes.
afternoon, you sit out on a relaxed chair, on an easy chair, and
Yeah,
read
yeah,
about it, mark it. There's no replacement for that. And some of
yes.
probably your audience would term you and me as boomer uncles. I do.
Might be,
Might
might
be, as
be,
I said,
but
but I
but
want to throw my ideas and share my views that do read the books in physical
yeah,
form.
but obviously it is needed, because physical books are something that actually helps us in learning from the stages as toddlers. So from toddler age, we learning through the physical books, and it is irreplaceable, I think. Please do share the book links. I will mention them in the video pinned comment, so that the viewers can easily locate and easily go to them, because
And you
in
can
our
buy in
channel.
India. These 2 books that I was talking about, assertion book as well as UVM. UVM, you don't have to
Hmm,
buy it. The
okay.
assertion book, you can buy an Indian edition if you want to. Right? You don't have
Yeah,
to
sure. Please,
buy it.
please provide the link so that the students can easily jump into the links, and they can, if they want to buy, they will buy. And if any engineer is looking for such books for help, they will, because generally people have the taste that from a book they go digital, and once they are stuffed with digital, they want to come back to the book for relaxation. So people do ask questions in the comments of the videos, that can we have some book on the book suggestion. So it's for long it has been there is a request, so please book review. So it's better to listen from the person who has written the book philosophy, as well as the philosophy of the books, um, while he or she is creating the books. So I think that is the best thing. So I waited till the podcast is launched, and in couple of episodes, writers who have written the books, so they have shared. please do share the thumbnail, so I'll mention them in the video thumbnail in miniature form, so that people know that okay, there is some books in this episode, so they can at least have a taste of these books. So
They can get gifts. Your audience can get a free e-PDF of the UVM book that they can share the link, and that
yeah.
could be a bonus for them. Right? You don't have to pay
Yeah,
anything.
sure. Because students, honestly, I say, when we say in our channel, if we say the category of the viewer, 60% they are students, either they are BTech or they're MTech or doing the PhD, or so they ask, do they ask for the book? And in this world, uh, it is better to hear from the author. That is the, I think that is the best thing. When you hear from the author, the book philosophy, the philosophy that is contained in the book, as well as the philosophy that was used for writing the book, so I think both you get from the writer. That's why we have waited for long. And now, in this podcast, we invite authors also for books, and sometimes they are also a bit perplexed that why, because the students still look for books. Although we have digital alternatives, but students do ask for book. I'd like to emphasize again. So I'll mention them. Please do send me the links. I'll mention them in the video description as well as a pinned comment, so that they can easily navigate to the books, whether
Good,
it is paid, whether it is free, but however people are looking for. It's
good, great.
a cumulative experience in last 6 years of Tech Simplified TV.
Oh,
Multiple requests we have received about the
oh, since
books.
this year, since you launched, wow, very good.
Yeah,
Congratulations. Yeah, it's a
yeah.
long journey.
So yeah, so we'll move on to the next question. With AI rapidly entering the EDA workflows, how do you see the verification landscape evolving over next decade? So I'm not talking about this present, right now, what is happening, how it is going to evolve. So you might be having a visionary view of that. So could you please share that with our audience?
Sure. I think, yeah, I think this is very, very pertinent question, especially for, as I mentioned, some of your audience is probably graduating this year, next year, and the upcoming years. And when they enter the field, generative AI will be there everywhere. When they look around, as I said, UVM, SVA, formal is all there, but along with the flavor of generative AI is just the way it is right now. But if you, I can split this into two pieces. One is how are the chip design and semiconductor industry embracing this technology, revolution, as well as what should your audience, or the students audience of your podcast should learn about the whole thing, right? So starting with the first one, I think the industry is clearly moving towards it. You look at all these SNUGs, that CDN lives, the mentor user to user conferences, the DVCon, the tags, everywhere today in the chip design world, the generative AI is there. So Eric Berg from Microsoft, if you will, I mean, I think he has put in few very. I mean, these are the people that you want to listen to and see where the direction is, where it's headed, right? So when you talk to them, look, in the future, I can see that there's some of these comments on LinkedIn, etc. You can see it. Generative AI is here, and it can even replace some of the EDA tools, right? Because the tool landscape is also evolving. For example, if you look at the spyglass, the linters, and etc., all that is now, a lot of it can be done with generative AI, and they also become machine learning. And sometimes people confuse between machine learning and generative AI. Machine learning can help you cluster things. In the past, for example, if you were to run a spyglass CDC check, it threw 10,000 violations at you. What you've got to probably look at is only 200 of them in a collated way. Machine learning helps you fundamentally, phenomenally well. And that's something I know many of these EDA companies are putting in there. So that's something, be it Real Intent, be it your Synopsys, Cadence, Siemens. Siemens has something called a Questa 1 and Questa Lint. They start doing this generative AI and machine learning. Sometimes it is combined, so you may not see it, but fundamentally, again, for your audience, your students, it's important to differentiate what is AI versus ML, even though they are kind of coined together in a lot of context, but they're fundamentally two different cousins, right? So there is an AI, there is an ML. So ML is a different platform altogether. For coverage closure, you may use ML. That's something becoming very, very popular today in the industry. So when you look down the line, I think few years down the line, 10 years is a little longer, but few years down the line, because the generative AI and machine learning is for sure entering the chip design as we speak. It's already there. Some of customers are already using it. And I do encourage people to attend the DVCons wherever they are. If they are from China, from Taiwan, Japan, everywhere there's this DVCon these days. And people talk about how they use generative AI, and I can see more and more adoption of it in the lint framework, in the coverage closure terminology, whole lot in backend. For example, if you want to just reduce, I mean, it's not that simple to reduce your shrink your size, but if you are simply retargeting, let's say even from an FPGA to an ASIC or an ASIC to an FPGA, a lot of that can be done in the near future using generative AI. So that's the industry side of the whole thing. Now, from university and student perspective, first of all, again, don't be left behind. Don't. There may be some professors who may not want to. Unfortunately, especially some of them, not all of them, but some of them may say, "Oh, do not use generative AI because that will spoil your thinking." To some extent, that is true. But if you use the right tool for the right job, because don't be left behind, go and learn it, see what you can do with it, tweak with a multi-agentic AI setup. You may not be able to do it, and that's something I do want to encourage with the student mindset. If you are in an EC or an EE, do not worry about coding all your Python yourself. Pair with your CS student or an IT student or some other, I don't know, maybe there's an AI stream or whatever. So pair with partner. It's a teamwork. None of it. I couldn't do any of what I'm doing without Ajita and Ben Cohen and all others helping me, right? People have to work in team, right? So learn that and then start adopting it. Learn this new technology. Generative AI is for sure there. Machine learning is for sure making a lot of inroads. For example, if you have to write a new checker that can be statistically analyzed, you could do, and this is something we are doing as we speak. Today in the morning, I was with a customer call. We are deploying machine learning to analyze their log files, right? That's something happening every now and then. So this is no longer, the future. It's actually the current. And so your students, when they come out, they will have to adopt all these new technologies to be in the race, in the game. And again, race is probably a tricky word, but if you like the race, if you're an F1 guy, call it a race. If you're not an F1 guy, don't call it a race, call it a journey, enjoy it. It's not, I'm not talking about a rat race. I'm talking about real race where you enjoy this. Yeah.
Yes, it could be a marathon.
Yeah, it is a marathon. Yeah.
Yeah. So now one thing I would like to add here, that from the next question we'll go in a very fast forward mode. Up
Yes.
to this point it was mostly towards the students,
Yep.
and there will be fast forward for the budding engineers and the mid-level people and maybe people above them. So what are the some biggest challenges for your clients are currently facing in verification, and how AsFigo helping them to address those?
Excellent. So this is again, I think it's a. I wouldn't do a lot of marketing on what you're asking. Though I could, but I don't want to do it. But technology
Yeah, do
wise,
it. There is no limitation. Please do it.
I know.
So
But I'm still saying,
it,
I want the
it's
podcast to be interesting. I don't want it to
yeah.
become a marketing bandwagon for anyone, for that matter. But conceptually, what we are doing is, as I mentioned, back in '98 when I started working at Philips Semiconductors in Eindhoven, I saw LEDA doing great, and then that was acquired by Synopsys. Now, fast forward 2023, we started this, and we looked at UVM, UPF, PSS. There are a bunch of languages for low power, for system Cs and stuff, and that code quality has become deterioratingly bad, right? So especially because there's a lot of, I mean, I'm not blaming anybody here, but there's a lot of consulting companies who come in and go. They don't have a long time frame with the code. Then the code is not of high quality, unfortunately, because you're on a time pressure and you don't have time to learn that what is there, unlearn, and then do it again, and etc. That is where the linters are extremely useful. So we started building it. That is unique in the industry today. If you look at UVM lint or SVA lint, if you just do a Google, or if you are into chat GPTs, go and ask chat.openai.com who develops UVM lint and etc. You would see that AsFigo has been pioneering it, though there have been commercial some of these tools. But what we have done with open source is something that enables somebody sitting in Canada, I cannot name that company, but that company is one of our early stage customers who wound down now. It's an AI company, a chip design company. And they basically said, we are looking at your code and then we are developing it, branching off, and then doing something else on our own, which is fair, right? That's how we motivate customers. We call it an open invitation. We are also building quality metrics, which is kind of quality and quantitative. It's called Halstead and McCabe. If I don't know if your audience is familiar with it, but I think that's something we have a paper coming up in DVCon. My colleagues will be presenting. including Ajita, Hema, and others. And a point I'm trying to say is you no longer just write a code and say it's done. You're going to analyze different metrics, and these are important for your generative AI as well, because how do you weight your Llama versus your OpenAI, right? You're going to measure the quality of an LLM based on definitive metrics such as Halstead, Makabe. These metrics have been in software for a long time. We are bringing that into a SystemVerilog UVM world, which I find is extremely unique and very, very valuable. Customers are finding it. We are bringing that into the customers' use cases. But deeper down, we are also deploying a lot of mixed signal verification technologies. We have built something called a MathLab, so it's just for mathematical models in your AMS chips, right? So that's something we are building for our customers. We are helping customers to go the generative AI with a multi-agentic setup. Probably some of your audience, the mid-career folks, have been attending webinars from various EDA vendors who claim that they can generate properties or assertions using a prompt. But even in the same webinar, you can spot syntax errors, unfortunately. Even on LinkedIn, a few days back, we probably saw some of it. A person sitting in Noida wrote a piece of code on Copilot and said, hey, here is a code. And then somebody else figured out, hey, there is a syntax error on your code. And I just jumped in and said, look, that's not his fault. And that's not a fault of Copilot either. It is just a lack of multi-agentic. So that is what we offer to customers today. You can generate meaningful code, high quality code using our framework of multi-agentic AI. That is primarily what we sell to our customers.
Great to hear about all of the new advancements, and students will be encouraged to follow on that. And the budding engineers and the people above them, they will be, I think, highly attracted to this interesting facts. And one more thing about the AI do not know what is true or false. So it based on the facts that has been fed to you. As you have mentioned about the syntax error, it might have happened that whatever fed to him was fact. It was not checked whether it is true or false in terms of sanctity. So
It's called a GIGO, right? Garbage in, garbage out.
Yes, garbage in, garbage out. I was about to say the jargon. So yes. Moving fast forward to the next question, that working across India, UK, and US, how do you see regional differences influence your approach on training, consulting, and customer engagement?
Um, Good question. So I started, as I said, I started my career in Netherlands. So I would say, I was shaped by the so-called European way of thinking, and the tie doesn't mean that, but so I didn't know what to wear. So and I like wearing tie. And my father would love to see me. It's no more, unfortunately, but he would have, he always preferred that people with high education should be dressed up in a neat fashion, go on a car, wear ties and blazers. I wish I do more and more when he was alive, but I couldn't do it. But now at least I do it. It's not for the UK or the Europe, but of course, it's also influenced by here. Where the moment I walk into India with the same thing, it happened 3 months back. I walk into a conference room. The CEO is in there as in shorts, and I'm wearing a tie and a blazer. And within the meeting, I just knocked it off. So you got to adapt, right? You got to adapt as the keyword. When I go to the US, if I were to meet the investors, of course, I still have my tie on. But if I were to meet my counterparts, my classmates, my students, a lot of them are in Nordic region. For example, when I go and talk to them, of course, you got to adopt. I think that's the keyword. Talk to your audience, figure out who it is. If it's an investor, you know what I'm saying. If you're going to feel for funding,
Yes.
you better be
Yes.
formal, right? They need to respect you. And many of the meetings in UK, we in fact had an opportunity to go into a a House of Lords, right? So for representing something on the open AI, on the open source architectures, right? So when you talk present as we go to the House of Chambers in the UK, British Parliament, you do not want to walk in with the jeans and a t-shirt. You need to be dressed up accordingly, right? And you
Yes.
got to use the right term. Typically, Indians, since you mentioned, probably this has happened in our podcast too, we tend to talk too fast. And that's the first thing that a lot of us learn when we come out or we start talking to our European counterparts. Because, in general, in Hindi, they say Gora, in Tamil, they say Vellai. So We think that all of them are native English speakers, but the fact is not. France, Germany, Netherlands, they do not understand the same level of fast English. They understand better English for sure, but they do not follow the same pace at which we Indians group words. And this is not about being right or wrong, nothing bad about it. But I would also argue that it is due to our mother tongues. We get influenced by the way we speak, but we got to tweak it to the right audience, right? If you talk to a Japanese, Korean, etc., it's different. If you talk to an European, it is different. Americans more or less can follow you, right? So, and if you talk to a Scottish, even though I have lived in about 3 years here in the UK and I've stayed here before in Southampton and other places, I still find it a little hard for me to follow the Scottish accent on a given note. Of course, I get better as I go along, but where I'm going with this, you got to adopt. One is the time zone, got to be flexible. I'm glad you took your evening to talk to me on my lunchtime. And similarly, when you walk across the sea, across the ocean with the US counterparts or Taiwan and others, you got to kind of make those adjustments, but do keep an eye on your health and etc. Well-being is important. Take your timely breaks, take your bio breaks, go for your walks, swims, jogging, triathlon, whatever you guys do, please do. I think especially for students, I want to. I mean, I'm not an old man, but I'm still wanting to give that advice. Take care of your health. Do not skip your breakfast. That's something I made a mistake in my college days. Don't do that mistake. Do have your breakfast, have your fun, but do hard work.
Yeah, that was a great lot of suggestions, because many people do not know about the attires you said, and the cultural differences. People actually do have different kinds of mindset. So what we are mostly influenced through the movies, the Hollywood movies. So that is making the difference. So that's why we have a person who is live in broadcasting, in live streaming, so the person can guide the youngsters blindly. Do not follow the Hollywood movies. So um, Srini has shared the perspectives of different regions. So I think that will be helpful for the youngsters. And now I'll move on to the next question. Is that how have you seen the semiconductor ecosystem in India evolve over the years, and it was in the past, and where do you see it is heading in the near future? Near future means in the next decade. So what do you?
Could you repeat? Sorry. Could you repeat that question?
Yeah. So how have you how have you seen the semiconductor ecosystem in India over last decade? It is evolved, and in the next coming decade, where do you see it is heading?
Okay, great, great. I think okay. So I think it's a wonderful question, and we say this. I'm probably biased towards Bangalore, but no, take it as an India thing. But when we walk into the El Camino Real in San Jose, along with some of my potential customers and friends who work at the Teslas and Facebook, the Metas, and etc. And when we talk about verification or EDA companies and etc., the bulk of design and verification, chip design, is being done in one single row. In fact, I jokingly say 30% of your chips are verified in the single road in Bangalore. It's called Outer Ring Road. Right. So what I'm saying is India has been doing phenomenally well in chip design, right? Thanks to all the ecosystem, all the educations, the IITs and the NITs and all other universities, the TCEs of the world, right? They all do a phenomenal job, fantastic job. Hats off to all the academicians who chose to remain there. I know it's a tough job, especially with the competition coming from the industry, but they're doing a phenomenal job in India in terms of educating it. And we have played our bit. Ajita started this company called CVC back in 2004 when nobody was even speaking Verilog in. I mean, the reason why we set up that company was to do projects. And when we went ahead, looked at candidates, nobody spoke Verilog. You know what I'm saying? They can speak
Yes,
English.
yes.
They couldn't code in Verilog. And we ended up doing, let's start doing verification training, because that is our primary job. I said back in 20 years, you're under 10 years, but I'm talking about 20 years history. Look at it. 2004, she started it, and then it evolved over a period of time. We were the only ones to offer verification training all along for a long time in India. And then we also went global. We went to Germany, we went to Poland, I went to Brazil. It took me to places, trust me, right? So the education really is wonderful thing. And I think India has been at the center of all this in terms of adopting the technology. In fact, I sometime back mentor Siemens presented some slides saying the maximum adoption of UVM, yeah, it was a UVM 1.2 day. So we conducted this UVM 1.2 launch when it was happening in the US and in Bangalore. I was hosting this session. Dennis Brophy was there. He was unleashing the UVM 1.2 with us at, I think, the not Park Sheraton, but Ibis Hotel. Yeah, Ibis Hotel in Belandur. So he said, and he presented real data saying India is leading the adoption of UVM across the globe, right? Make no mistake, India has been at the forefront of all these technology deployments, be it PSS, be it low power, be it UVM. And I don't see why this will not continue. There is no other country who can replace today. We are all proud to be Indians in that sense. I think both the Make in India programs and other things, irrespective of your, as you said, the religious slash political adherences, etc. India is doing phenomenally well, and I expect that to continue for the next 10 years. And we are all in a wonderful place to make a difference. A lot of chip design will happen in India. What will change for good is in-house companies. There are the Zincores and etc. Especially with the RISC-V. If you don't talk about RISC-V, our podcast will be
Yeah.
it will be incomplete, if you will. So RISC-V is becoming a big thing because it's open source, and India is taking a center stage in doing be it your Shakti. Probably some of you will know Professor Kamakoti. I know
Yes.
him for a long time. He's been my good friend and mentor. He's been to our house as well. I've been to his places. So again, he's driving the Shakti RISC-V thing going on. I think that's a big revolution. I think it's well respected. Whenever I walk into San Francisco, people talk about Shakti. I think that's a big thing, right? So I think people know what we are doing in India. So you are no longer just somewhere out there. 30-40% of semiconductors is happening in India. And I know it is happening in Hubli's, no longer just the Bangalore, it's Hubli's of the world, the Kolkatas, everywhere else. In fact, I have a friend who is an ex-NVIDIA who is sitting in Northeast, somewhere, it's not even Assam, somewhere else in Northeast, I forgot where he is, but he's sitting there and building it. There are people from Bangladesh, Dhaka doing this. I know there are people in Pakistan, for example, if we like it or not, but it's all happening. 10X Engineers is a popular company out there. What I'm saying is, it is no longer restricted to a country or a particular city, but India is definitely taking the leadership. But you will, I know you will not be left behind, but we have to embrace the generative AI and we have spoken too many of this time, but I think it's important for the students to learn that this technology is there and it's going to grow and grow. So please embrace the change. That's the only way to survive.
Yes. So thanks for the total answer, and we'll move on to the next question. Fast forward question that you have presented at major events like DVCon, SNUG, and DesignCon. What have been the most memorable moments or thought questions on the stage? Can you share something that actually is still remembered in your mind? So something memorable moments.
I think I would say, every DVCon and DAC has been memorable for us because, we take pride in what we do, and I contribute to this DVCon, as many of you are DAC, many of you see it, it's like 1 or 2 days thing. But the work for it happens 6 months, even 9 months before. So we start, for example, the DVCon US work today for the 2026, right? We are all part of the committees and etc. So when you work so much hard, everything is, it's kind of, again, a cherishable journey that we have been doing. But if you want to pick one out of it, I would say the Accelera award that Ajita received from Accelera at DVCon India. We're the first company to receive it. Ajita, her leadership, she got that. I would say that's probably one of our golden moments. We still cherish that as a small 2-minute video on YouTube. It's still there. So, when Ajita receiving that plaque from Dennis Brophy, or Ludai, sorry. Ludai was the Accelera chairman. He gave it. Was it? Oh yeah, I think it's Ludai. So essentially, point is, I think that's one of our bright spots that we have had in our life, in the professional life, in the career. I would say in terms of DAC and DVCon, but otherwise, every DAC and DVCon is important for us because because that's the one that keeps me ticking. Right, all the questions that you're asking, I'm able to answer somewhat relevant thanks to all this because I'm not learning everything by myself. I'm learning from all my audience around, all the people who contribute papers, abstracts. You learn a lot by learning about machine learning, by learning what they do with CDCs, RDCs, UBMs, MS. There's no way sitting in one place you're going to say that I will learn everything on your own. So each of them has been a journey we learn all the time.
Yes, yes. Great, because there is a lot of flux flowing around us. It's a technology flux, I'll say. um, and and we knowingly or unknowingly absorb it.
Mhm.
So a lot of things, lot of flux we go through.
Yeah.
I try to resonate with your view, so that's why I said it.
Thank you.
So next, moving to the next question, is that if you could instantly change one aspect of the verification ecosystem today, what that would be and why?
Move from quantity to quality. That's important because there's a whole lot of junk code out there. In terms of verification, do not think that it's just typing. Do not think that whatever I do is the best. Open your eyes, look for new ways to do it. The Halstead metrics, Mekabe I'm just trying to give you ideas on what I know. Do not think that, oh, I wrote my APV code and that's it. That's the best in the world. Always benchmark yourself with the latest papers or DVCons, attacks, and etc. See where you could improve. I think that's important. Right? That's the one thing that I would change, especially from a India context. A lot of code is thrown out, a lot of text is thrown out. They're not always all the best code. I would strongly suggest you link them because they are now free. You don't have to pay anybody, right? You go and measure yourself how well you're doing, benchmark all the time what you do, keep improving.
Thanks for the advice and the suggestions that I think the present engineers as well as the future aspirants will be able to follow. So we'll move over to the last question of today from my side, and there are few comments from viewers which will take in the last few minutes. So
Sure.
the last question from my side is, what's your opinion about the Indian startup culture right now? How do you see it, the problems, the real time challenges, and any advice, because you are able to found a company outside India, so there are obviously there are some cultural shift there, and what will be your suggestions and advice?
Great question. I think that's a very, very relevant, especially for your budding engineers and who could be the future entrepreneurs, or also the engineers who are working today. I think the good thing is India has in the value chain has risen up that some of the salaries people say this. The guy who sits in Meta in Fremont or in somewhere in San Jose or somewhere is Sunnyvale is probably 3x salary of Bangalore. So what I'm trying to say is Bangalore salary, or sometimes it's even 2x. Sometimes it's even matching, right? So what I'm trying to say is the salary levels have gone up in India quite considerably in our domain especially. So that means there's a lot of money available. So what I do see is the risk-taking ability is still a bit less. I would like anybody with 10, 15 years experience of industry who have done this before, try and take some bold moves, come out with your ideas. Do not always be bound by 9 to 5 jobs. I know it's not 9 to 5, but we call it 9 to 5, but not a 9 to 5 job and with all the commutes and etc. But do try and take some risks, but at the same time do not pollute it. Do try and work together. I think that's something that fundamental. I mean, everybody wants to be an entrepreneur. It's great, but can we do something together? Is something that's been broadly missing. Especially since you asked me, I found two companies in India, one in the UK, and I had one in US briefly, and then we had to shut it down due to Corona and etc. But what I see as a fundamental difference, even a Y Combinator thing in the US versus India, is we have all the infrastructure in place, but I don't know if it's ego, if it's something else. I don't know what it is, but I got to find it. But what I do see is the lack of ability to work together and make something bigger. We are always trying, I wouldn't call it the ego, but probably tutu meme culture kind of thing. You know what I'm saying? I don't know if it's a right thing to say, but I'm not blaming anybody. I'm saying the entrepreneurship, you can make a bigger thing only together. There's only so much you can do on your own. You may have money, you may have the idea, but you need, as I was giving you an example of at a student level, if you have to code a generative AI, do not do it yourself. Bring a CS candidate from other, streams. So do it as a multidisciplinary work in the college level. When you are out there in the public, in the service for a while, try and get your right-minded people, start working together, trust each other. I think that's something somewhat lacking, unfortunately. I mean, this is just my observation. I wish I'm wrong, and I could be wrong, but I think people need to get together to make something bigger.
Yes, I'd like to appreciate you because there is nothing right and wrong. What we observe throughout our lives, we express ourselves in that way. And if people do not have that limitation, it's good. If they have, they will come out of the limitation as you advised, and they will work together to make something good. And after that, they will make something great. So that's the advice. I think the youngsters, they will get inspired because they have lot of energy. Means even just one example, in our channel we publish different technical episodes, and at the last, when the episodes are done, we pack it together and release as a marathon. Now the engineers, they have a overnight reading habit, so they go and watch those marathons.
The
So
binge watch. Yeah. Okay.
yeah,
Nice.
binge watching, right? So for education, they have started binge watching. It's great. And good thing. So they are taking the new things in the new way, in a positive way. I think they will take your advice in a very positive manner, so that, and for this peer learning, what you said, it is technically termed as peer learning. We have also started another series live, that is in parallel with the podcast. We have started a semiconductor webinar. We are featuring students. They share their learnings with their student community only. So
Mhm.
students are sharing, students are watching. So at least the culture should have some new spices, so that the students are also able to share and know. So their inquisitiveness, because if the students are not inquisitive, so they will not walk the long road. So because curiosity is only food for the technology. If they lose the curiosity, if they look for only money, so lost, they will be lost. So we have started, and that's why we can resonate with you, as you have shared that one CS student can come up with an ECE student, and they make good things and great things together. So I think this should be there in future, maybe future projects or something like that. And that would be good, because if they do it together, say, I just say, for open source software, someone had appended a part of the code to the software, and some ECE guy, that guy actually develops a circuit on based on that. So if something imaginary, I'm saying imaginary because even science fiction was imaginary long back. Now they have become a
Right.
reality. So imagination is the key to see the
Yes.
future.
Yep.
So
Okay.
that's why
Pleasure talking to
I,
you. Yeah. Let's move to the Q&A part. I mean, I would like to see
yeah.
what the audience would
So
ask.
first, I'll show one comment. It's only a comment. So Mr. Dinkar, I don't know who he is, student or he's an engineer. He says, "Hey guys." So he's present and he said hi to us.
Okay.
And next, I'll go to the question. Yeah, yes, sir. Can you ask how can an engineer who has just started career in DV can start the journey in AI accelerated chips, who has no idea of what it is? So this is from Apex. I don't know whether Apex is real name or nickname, but the question came from this handle.
Nice name, Apex. Okay. So I think we have addressed some of it. The DV. Some echo. Is that okay? Can you hear? Okay. Can you hear me well? Okay. Good. So yes, I think if you are he or she starting the Apex is starting her career on DVE, you're prime for generative AI. So there are probably two things: AI accelerated chips. So probably there are two aspects to this AI. If you're going to work on an AI accelerated chip, to design an AI accelerator chip, of course, you got to think about how, for example, the GPU. I mean, if it's an AI acceleration for image processing, you want to think about how the rendering happens, how the frames are formed, how and all, because it's not about truly randomness. Especially in DV, we sell a lot of constraint random verification, but don't always apply that, especially in the RISC-V world and your image processing, the GPUs. When you're processing frames, it's not about randomness alone, because it's not random altogether. There's a very definitive way of feeding your the GPU pipelines. You got to understand that, right? So the vectoring, all that, you got to understand deeper of the domain to become an expert. Languages and methodologies and tools, be it any tool, will only take you so far. You got to become a domain expert. So when you say A accelerated chips, Make sure you understand what you mean. Is it for image processing? Is it for classification? Is it for something else? It could be for an irrigation project, right? Please understand the domain. That's important. And then accordingly develop your skills. In my case, it was Ethernet. In your case, it could be PCIe, it could be USBs, it could be the chiplets. So you got to understand what your because ultimately the chip is serving a purpose. It is not a piece of silicon. It's not just a piece of silicon. It's going to sit in a system. Being in DV, you got to be a systems engineer to understand what it is intended for and start working towards it.
So thanks for the answer. I think Apex got his or her answer. So we'll move over to the next question, and that will be the last Q&A. I think no one has posted after that. So let me flash it on the screen.
Please.
So Bharat Shinde has asked, for intermediate engineers, does it make more sense to grow horizontally? Do you see that expertise in one domain is at risk?
Excellent question. Thank you, Bharat. Thanks for asking. Thanks for tuning in. Um, okay, there are two kinds of horizontal growths I can imagine. So we just started talking about domain. When you say domain, it could be AI domain versus a processor domain versus a networking domain. That's kind of one kind of domain. The other domain, especially coming from a chip design engineer, is should I be the front end or back end? I don't know exactly what Bharat is referring to, but I'll try and address the second part first because a lot of engineers ask me that I've been in front end for 5 years. Should I move to back end now? I want to have a taste of it, right? I don't want to be just doing, coding, but I want to do DRC, LVS, or analog design, layouts, etc. It's a very fair to ask. And my general suggestion has been that if you have, I don't know, again, Bharat's background, but if you haven't done your master's or PhD, that's the right thing to do because that's when you get really wider scope of what all aspects of VLSI is. If you're stopped at bachelor's, maybe it's time for you to step back and think about do you want to do a master's or a PhD to see if you want to do that. Do not discount it. There's never a late game. Always there's people do this all the time, especially here in Europe. So try and if you want to grow horizontally, I would say taking a new course, new education. It could be a short term or a long term course. That could be a way if you want to explore different aspects of chip design. Because you're at the mercy of your employer. If you are very good at, let's say, doing UVM, a very little chance that you're going to get a physical design work from the next project, unless there are some companies who do this, but not all companies, right? So you got to be very lucky to do that. So maybe that's a good thing to do if you want to do it. But in terms of domain expertise, if you want to talk about AI versus, let's say, your processor versus networking versus this, I think that's a great jump that people can do because definitely being in one single domain can be at risk. Of course, RISC, risk processor, is evolving. You're not at risk anymore. But however, if you are in networking, you want to go into a RISC-V design and etc. I think there are companies who are definitely willing to take that risk with you and then adopt you. Most of the time you have to change your employer to get to that kind of shift, but any shift will happen with its pros and cons. So you got to like it, you got to put in your effort. It is definitely possible. Does it make sense or not? I would leave it to the individual. But if you are working on a very old technology, of course you are at risk. So you got to, in that case, you got to innovate all the time. And for example, if somebody is working on a Bluetooth, let's say low energy BLE chip, it is good. It is good for your company to make money, but is it the future? What is the data? So you got to look at that standard and see where you go with it. Okay.
So thanks for the answer. I think Bharat received the answer, and I don't see any more comments today or questions.
And
So
we can do it offline. I mean, let them throw in the comments and we will respond back sometime. Yeah.
yeah,
Whenever at all.
sure, sure,
Okay.
sure, 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 sure. So thank you for the session, coming to this session, and especially inspiring the youngsters,
Thank
because
you.
yeah, youngsters, they need real example, because the heroes who are in movies, they are curated, they are artificial, right?
Right.
So today you are watching a movie and then coming back and dreaming that how can I do this and that, but that's go in a daydreaming. But when you see real heroes who are there performing real things, it helps them to not grow only as an individual or at the individual level, but also spread that learning process to others. So that means not only limited to him or her, and the culture will grow. I think that is one of the purpose of running the TSP, to inspire the next generation, so that they see real people, real heroes, and not the movie heroes in front of them. They really get inspired by them, and they, some of them might uh, get inspired to take the path in the same way of their leader. So thank you, Srini, for coming to today's session, and as there are no questions more, we will close the session today here. And we have run for 1 hour 45 minutes. That's a
Yes,
really
it took
long time.
way too long, but as I said, I think
Yeah.
it's a very open session. Thank you, and thanks for your team
Yes.
reaching out multiple times to schedule this. I know it is a lot of hard work. Kudos to you, and
Yes.
I also want to say, I think you should have said that, but please do subscribe to this channel. I think it's important. I think TSP, I have personally been benefiting from it. I was telling them before, I enjoy the talks, I enjoy the shows, and sometimes I even refresh, if not learn. I also learn things from your channel content. It's very inspiring. Thanks for doing this. Yeah, good luck.
You are welcome. Contents are mainly created for the youngsters, because their curious minds, they get food, the mental food. One is the physical food, that is from the money, and the mental food is from the content. So and the TSPs, we thought of long time of having the real heroes here, real unsung heroes. They are real heroes, but no one, no channel, no general media, no, they are running after the politics and high TRP things, and they are night and day, they are beaming with a lot of spices. So we
And
don't have
also they have
spices here.
quoted, probably there are paid content, and yeah, in the
Yeah.
full
Yeah.
declaration, we should completely tell everybody in this audience post
Yeah.
this event as well. It's totally unfiltered. You saw that live
Yes.
content as well as zero money involved in between, and we are
Yes.
not a paid channel either way, right? So we are not here to
Yes.
say just promote this. There
Yes.
are magazines who will publish you for a lakh or 50,000. No, I do want people to make money. That's different, but it's not a
Yeah.
paid content. So I think that's important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes,
Okay.
that is for the TSPs, that for that purpose, to encourage and spread the energy in both direction, and the leaders as well as the future leaders. So that's why we have our own show, and we don't waited for any conventional media to step into this process. We just started and we are ongoing. I think today is the 33, that is the 33rd
Oh, wow.
episode.
Nice.
So we'll be
Congratulations.
counting more,
I wish you get to
and
50
maybe,
and 100 very soon. Yeah. Good luck.
yeah. Yeah, and we in case viewers request, we'll sit sometime to in future again. So we'll keep
Also, if they
our
like it, why
uh,
not?
yeah,
Okay. Good luck.
sure. So bye for today,
Maybe you should
viewers.
come to
And
DVCon India. I would extend a warm welcome to you. Maybe you should interview some of the people at DVCon if you're in Bangalore at that
yeah,
time.
our setup is not up to that kind of setup, right? So our setup is mostly through the online process.
Okay.
So we'll think of maybe in roadmap in future, sometime we think of, and we have to implement that. Actually, we have to break it down, we have to analyze, and then we have to take the steps and go on.
Yeah, yeah. It's just a
Definitely.
suggestion. Do what is
Yeah.
right for you.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Sure, sure,
I want
sure.
to see more
In
and more of your stuff. Yeah.
in
Good luck.
past in fact in past, I have personally, I was part of Synopsis, so there I was in the hosting committee of the SNUG. So
Oh, okay.
so
You have.
yeah, so they are used to SNUG Bangalore. So that time, now it is split in two, SNUG Bangalore and SNUG Noida. So
I,
so there I know the thrills, and it's very good. It's kind of intoxicating, I will say the
yeah,
word
it is. Yes,
intoxicating. Yes.
indeed.
So I would like to encourage students. As you have said, there are multiple events. As already I have experienced in last decade, multiple such conferences I have attended in physically or virtually. Recently, also I attended one such event virtually. It was from E Times.
Mm.
So I would like to encourage the new generation so that they adopt this culture. They come out of their shell and they learn about the peer knowledge in the conferences.
Thank you.
Okay.
Good luck.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Bye
Thanks
for
for
today.
having me here. Bye.
Bye.
Namaste. Thank you. Take care.